The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it. My hands were shaking when I finally tore through the seal, and what I saw made my stomach drop like a stone. 0% match with the man I'd called Dad for 32 years. I read the line 5 times, then 10, waiting for the words to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. My wife Jessica found me sitting on the floor with the paper crumpled in my fist, and when she asked what was wrong, I couldn't even form the words. She read it herself, and her face went white. "Marcus, this has to be a mistake," she whispered, kneeling beside me. But the company had a 99.9% accuracy rate, and I'd paid extra for the expedited processing and verification. This wasn't a mistake. This was my life shattering into pieces I didn't know how to pick up. I'd ordered the test 3 months ago as a birthday gift to myself, one of those ancestry things everyone was doing. My dad, Richard Caldwell, had always joked about our family being boring white-bread Americans with no exciting heritage. I thought it would be fun to prove him wrong, maybe find some Irish or Italian roots to spice up the Thanksgiving conversations. Instead, I found out he wasn't my father at all. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house in suburban Cleveland with the test results folded in my jacket pocket. Mom was in the garden, wearing those ridiculous floral gloves she'd owned since I was a kid. She smiled when she saw me, that same warm smile that had greeted me after every baseball game, every school play, every disappointment and victory. "Marcus, what a surprise. Your father's inside watching the game." I almost turned around right then. Almost got back in my car and pretended I'd never opened that envelope. But I didn't. "Mom, we need to talk. Where Dad can't hear." Her smile faltered, and something flickered behind her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or recognition. We sat in the sunroom, the same place she'd told me about Grandpa's cancer, about Aunt Linda's divorce, about every heavy thing that ever needed saying. I put the paper on the glass table between us. She didn't touch it. She didn't even look at it. "How long have you known?" I asked, my voice barely steady. My mother, Patricia Caldwell, the woman who'd never missed a parent-teacher conference, who'd taught me to tie my shoes and drive a stick shift, started crying without making a sound. Tears just rolled down her face while her hands stayed perfectly still in her lap. "Since the beginning," she finally said. "Since the day you were born." The room tilted. "Does Dad know?" She shook her head. "Richard thinks you're his. He's always thought you're his." I stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "You've been lying to him for 32 years. Marcus, please sit down. Let me explain." But I didn't want to sit. I wanted to flip the table, punch a hole in the wall, scream until my throat bled. Instead, I stood there while my mother told me a story I'd never asked to hear. She'd met my biological father at a conference in Chicago in 1992, 6 years into her marriage to Richard. They were having problems, she said, the kind of problems young couples have when real life doesn't match the fairy tale they'd imagined. Richard was working 80-hour weeks trying to make partner at his firm. She was lonely. "It was one night," she said, her voice hollow. "One stupid, selfish night that I've regretted every day since." She'd come home, confessed everything to Richard, and begged for forgiveness. He'd given it to her. They decided to work on their marriage, go to counseling, start fresh. 2 months later, she found out she was pregnant. "I didn't know what to do," she said. "The timing. It could have been either of them. So you just decided to lie?" Her eyes flashed with something between anger and desperation. "I decided to protect my family. To give you a father who would love you, who would be there for you. By building everything on a lie. By giving you Richard." She stood now too, her voice rising. "A man who changed your diapers at 3 a.m., who coached your little league team, who cried at your wedding. That's your father, Marcus. Not some stranger from a hotel room in Chicago." I heard footsteps in the hallway. "Everything okay in here?" Dad's voice. Richard's voice. The man I'd thought was my father standing in the doorway with concern creased into his forehead. Mom's eyes met mine, pleading. "We're fine, honey," she said, her voice suddenly bright and false. "Just some drama with the garden club." He looked at me, and I saw it then. We had different eyes, different nose, different everything. How had I never noticed? "You sure, son? You look like you've seen a ghost." The word son hit me like a physical blow. "I'm sure, Dad. Just work stress." The lie came out so easily it scared me. When he left, Mom grabbed my arm. "Please don't tell him. Please, Marcus." It would destroy him. I pulled away from her. You mean it would destroy your perfect little lie? It would destroy your father's heart. And for what? To satisfy some need for biological truth that changes nothing about how he loves you. I left without answering. Jessica was waiting when I got home, and I told her everything while pacing our living room like a caged animal. What are you going to do? She asked when I finally stopped moving. I don't know. Tell him. Don't tell him. Track down my real father. Richard is your real father, Marcus. DNA doesn't change 32 years of love. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to believe that. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw that test result. 0% match. The next week was hell. Dad called 3 times asking if I wanted to go to the Indians game, and I let every call go to voicemail. Mom texted daily, each message more desperate than the last. Please let's talk. I know you're angry, but your father is worried. Don't punish him for my mistakes. Jessica thought I should tell him. He deserves to know the truth, she said one night while we lay in bed, both staring at the ceiling. Secrets like this, they're poison. What if it kills him? He's 61 with a heart condition. What if the shock literally stops his heart? And what if he finds out some other way? What if he does his own DNA test? Then he learns not only that you're not his son, but that both his wife and his son lied to him. She was right. I hated that she was right. I spent hours on those ancestry forums, reading stories from other people who discovered similar secrets. Some had told their fathers and regretted it. Some hadn't told and regretted that. There was no right answer, just different versions of pain. I also started digging into my biological father. The DNA company had matched me with several half-siblings I'd never known existed, all from the same man. His name was David Morrison. He lived in Seattle. He'd been married twice, had 5 other kids that I could find, and according to his Facebook page, he spent most of his time fishing and posting political memes. He had my eyes. Looking at his profile photo was like looking at a version of myself in 20 years. One of my half-sisters, a woman named Kara, had sent me a message through the DNA site. Hey, just saw we share a father. Would love to connect and learn more about you. She had 3 exclamation points in a 2-sentence message. This was probably exciting for her. For me, it was a nightmare. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove to my parents' house again, this time on a Tuesday afternoon when I knew Mom would be at her book club. Dad was in the garage, organizing his tool bench for the 1,000th time. He did that when he was stressed, created order out of chaos in the only way he knew how. Marcus, twice in 2 weeks, I'm a lucky man. He hugged me, and I hugged him back, memorizing the way his flannel shirt smelled like motor oil and Old Spice. Got time to talk, Dad? For you? Always. We sat on the old couch he kept in the garage, the same one I'd slept on during college summers when I'd stumbled home too drunk to make it upstairs. I'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times, but now that the moment was here, every word evaporated. I did one of those DNA tests. I started, my heart hammering against my ribs. Oh yeah? Find out we're secret royalty. He grinned, completely oblivious to the bomb I was about to drop. Dad, the results showed something unexpected. His smile faded. What kind of unexpected? I pulled out the paper I'd been carrying like a curse for 2 weeks. He read it slowly, his lips moving slightly as he processed the words. I watched his face change, watched understanding dawn like a terrible sunrise. I don't understand, he said, but his voice told me he did. He understood perfectly. Mom had an affair. Before I was born. She didn't know. I couldn't finish the sentence. Dad set the paper down on the couch between us like it might burn him. For a long time, he didn't say anything. He just stared at his hands, those hands that had taught me to throw a football, to build a birdhouse, to fix a carburetor. Does your mother know you're telling me this? He finally asked. She begged me not to. He nodded slowly, like that made perfect sense. How long has she known? Since I was born. Something in him broke then. I watched it happen, watched 38 years of marriage crack down the middle. She's known for 32 years that you might not be mine, and she never said a word. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't want to. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't apologize for telling me the truth. That's the one thing in this whole mess that doesn't need an apology. He stood up, walked to his tool bench, gripped the edge until his knuckles went white. You're my son, he said without turning around. I don't care what that paper says. You're my son. Dad, I changed your diapers. I walked the floor with you when you had colic. I taught you to ride a bike, to drive, to be a man. His voice cracked. Biology doesn't get to take that away from me. I wanted to run to him, to hug him, to tell him he was right. But I stayed frozen on that couch. But your mother, he continued, still not looking at me. Your mother lied to me for 3 decades. Let me believe. Let me think. He turned around, and I saw tears on his face for the first time in my life. I need you to leave now, Marcus. I need to think. Dad, please. Go. Before your mother gets home. I need to decide how to handle this without you in the middle of it. I left him there in the garage, surrounded by his carefully organized tools, his carefully organized life falling apart around him. Jessica was furious when I told her what I'd done. You blindsided him. You should have prepared him, or at least told him with your mom there. So she could lie more, manipulate the situation. So he could have support. So he didn't have to process this alone. We fought for hours, our voices echoing through the house until the neighbors probably heard every word. She thought I was cruel. I thought I was honest. Maybe we were both right. Mom called that night at 11:30. What did you do? She screamed into the phone. Richard just told me he wants a divorce. After 38 years, he wants a divorce because you couldn't keep your mouth shut. I couldn't keep lying to him. You mean you couldn't handle the discomfort of keeping a secret? So you destroyed our family to make yourself feel better. You destroyed the family when you cheated on Dad and then lied about it for 32 years. She made us sound like a wounded animal. He was my everything, Marcus. He was my second chance, and you just took him away from me. No, Mom. You took him away from yourself the day you decided lying was more important than truth. She hung up. Dad moved into a hotel that night. My perfect family, the one I'd grown up in, the one with the Christmas cards and the family vacations and the Sunday dinners, imploded in less than 24 hours. And it was all my fault. Or it was all Mom's fault. Or maybe there was enough fault to go around for everyone. The next morning, I got another message from Kara, my half-sister. Hey, I know this might be weird, but Dad, David, would really love to meet you. He didn't know you existed until the DNA results came through. He's really excited. Excited. My biological father was excited. While the man who'd raised me was sitting in a Marriott somewhere, having his heart broken. I deleted the message. Then I undeleted it. Then I stared at it for 20 minutes, my finger hovering over the reply button. Jessica found me like that, frozen with indecision. You're thinking about meeting him, she said. It wasn't a question. I don't know what I'm thinking. Marcus, your real dad is in a hotel right now, probably not sleeping, not eating, wondering if everything he built with you was a lie. Maybe focus on that relationship before starting a new one. She was right again. I hated how often she was right. I went to the hotel that afternoon. Dad answered the door in a wrinkled shirt, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. The room smelled like stale coffee and desperation. Can I come in? He stepped aside without a word. We sat across from each other, the space between us feeling like miles instead of feet. I'm sorry, I said. I should have handled this better. How do you handle finding out your entire life is built on a lie? He asked, his voice flat and tired. Is there a right way to do that? I don't know. Me neither. We sat in silence for a while. Then Dad said, I keep trying to remember if there were signs. If I missed something. If I was an idiot for not seeing it. You weren't an idiot. She lied. That's on her, not you. But I was there. I was your father. I am your father. How did I not know my own son wasn't biologically mine? Because biology doesn't matter. The words exploded out of me. You're right, Dad. You're my father in every way that counts. The DNA doesn't change that. But it changes everything with your mother. He looked at me, and I saw something die behind his eyes. How do I trust her again? How do I look at her and not see 32 years of lies? I didn't have an answer. She wants to talk to you, I said. She's called me 17 times. I know. She's called me 50. I'm not ready. Will you ever be ready? He laughed, a bitter sound that didn't match the man I knew. Probably not. But I'm definitely not ready today. I stayed with him for 3 hours, ordering pizza neither of us ate, watching a baseball game neither of us saw. Just being there. Being his son. When I left, he hugged me harder than he ever had before. I love you, Marcus. That doesn't change. I love you too, Dad. I meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. Over the next week, I became the messenger between my parents, carrying information neither wanted to share directly. Mom wanted him to come home. Dad wanted time. Mom wanted to explain. Dad wanted space. It was exhausting and heartbreaking, and I hated every second of it. Meanwhile, Kara kept messaging me. Just wanted to check in. No pressure, but Dad's really hoping to hear from you. We're all pretty chill, I promise. Would love to welcome you to the family. Her enthusiasm made me want to throw my phone into a lake. I had a family. A broken, shattered, lying family, but a family nonetheless. I didn't need a new one. But late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd look at David Morrison's Facebook page. At his photos with his kids, his grandkids, his fishing trips. He looked happy, uncomplicated, nothing like the mess I was living through. Jessica caught me one night, scrolling through his profile at 2 in the morning. You're going to meet him eventually, she said, sliding into bed beside me. You might as well stop torturing yourself and just do it. I'm not going to meet him. Marcus, you've looked at his Facebook literally every night for a week. You're curious. That's normal. What's normal about any of this? She took the phone from my hands. None of it. But pretending you don't have questions about your biological father isn't going to make those questions go away. What about Dad? How does he feel if I go meet the man Mom cheated with? You'd have to ask him. I did ask him. 2 days later, during another hotel visit. His reaction surprised me. You should meet him, Dad said, looking up from the legal documents he'd been reading. Divorce papers, probably. What? David Morrison is your biological father. You have a right to know where half your DNA comes from. I'm not going to be the petty ex-husband who stands in the way of that. You're not my ex-father, Dad. You're my father. Period. He smiled, small and sad. Then as your father, I'm telling you it's okay to be curious. It's okay to want answers. That doesn't threaten what we have. Are you sure? No, he admitted. I'm terrified you'll like him better than me. That you'll find some connection with him that makes sense in a way I never did. But I'm not going to let that fear control your choices. I'd never loved him more than I did in that moment. That night, I finally responded to Kara. Hey, sorry for the delay. This has all been a lot to process. I think I'm ready to talk, if the offer still stands. Her response came back in 30 seconds. OMG, yes. When? Where? I can come to you, or you can come here, or we can meet halfway. Dad is going to be so excited. We settled on a coffee shop in Columbus, halfway between Cleveland and where she lived in Cincinnati. Neutral territory. 2 weeks away. Enough time for me to change my mind 17,000 times. I told Jessica, who hugged me and said she was proud of me. I told Dad, who looked sad but supportive. I didn't tell Mom, because we weren't speaking except through forced text messages about Dad's whereabouts. The night before the meeting, I barely slept. What do you say to the man whose DNA you share, but who's never changed your diaper? What do you say to siblings you've never met who already consider you family? I got to the coffee shop 30 minutes early and sat in my car, watching people come and go. At exactly 2 p.m., a white SUV pulled up and 4 people got out. I recognized Kara from her profile photos. The others must be more half-siblings. And then a man stepped out of the passenger side. David Morrison, my biological father. He was shorter than I expected, maybe 5'10", but he had my eyes, my nose, my hands. Looking at him was like looking in a genetic mirror. Kara saw me through the coffee shop window and waved enthusiastically, like we were old friends meeting for brunch. I forced my legs to move, to carry me inside, to face this moment I'd been dreading and craving in equal measure. Marcus, Kara hugged me before I could stop her. Oh my God, you look just like Dad. This is insane. She introduced everyone rapid fire. Her brother Jake, her sister Melissa, her other brother Trevor. And then David stepped forward, his eyes wet. Marcus, he said, his voice shaking. I'm so sorry I didn't know about you. If I'd known, I would have. I would have been there. Would he have? Or was that just something people say when they meet the children they accidentally created during one-night stands? We sat down, ordered coffees no one drank, and they peppered me with questions. What did I do for work? Was I married? Did I have kids? What were my hobbies? It felt like a job interview where everyone already wanted to hire me. I answered mechanically, watching David watch me with this expression of wonder that made me uncomfortable. You have my grandmother's smile, he said at one point. My God, it's uncanny. I wanted to tell him I had Richard Caldwell's work ethic, Patricia Caldwell's stubbornness, their values, their lessons, their love. But I didn't. An hour in, Kara asked the question I'd been dreading. So how did your parents take all this? Finding out about the mix-up? It wasn't a mix-up, I said, my voice colder than I intended. It was an affair, and it destroyed my family. The table went quiet. David cleared his throat. I didn't know your mother was married. She never told me. If I'd known. It doesn't matter now. I cut him off. What's done is done. But it did matter. Everything mattered. Every choice made 33 years ago had led to this moment. To my dad living in a hotel, to my mom calling me crying every night, to me sitting across from strangers who shared my DNA, but not my life. Melissa, the quiet one, finally spoke. For what it's worth, we're really glad you exist. Even if the circumstances were complicated. And that was the thing, wasn't it? I existed because of a mistake, a betrayal, a moment of weakness that rippled forward through decades. But I also existed because Richard Caldwell had chosen to be my father anyway. Had chosen love over biology, commitment over resentment. The meeting lasted 2 hours. They wanted to see me again, wanted to introduce me to the whole extended Morrison clan. I said maybe, which everyone understood meant probably not. David walked me to my car. I know this is hard, he said. I know I'm not your dad, not in the ways that count. But if you ever want to get to know this side of your family, we're here. No pressure. No expectations. He seemed like a nice man. A good man, even. But he wasn't my father. Richard Caldwell was my father. I drove back to Cleveland with that certainty settling into my bones. Dad was still at the hotel when I got there, now 3 weeks into his self-imposed exile from his own life. How was it? He asked when I walked in. Weird. Uncomfortable. They were nice, but they're not your family. No, you're my family. He smiled, real and genuine for the first time since everything exploded. Good. Because you're stuck with me. We ordered Chinese food and watched the Indians game. And for a few hours, everything felt almost normal. Until I asked the question I'd been avoiding. What are you going to do about Mom?